Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 33 is brought to you by our incredible local friends in Waggle Golf and Barrel Theory Beer Company. With me, as always, is Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. Joe, you had a pretty fun night.
Yeah, I know I've been on leave or in the middle, back and forth on parental leave, but tonight was the annual thing where Craig Leipold, the owner of the Minnesota Wild, kind of held court with the local media. Tradition he's done every year, basically, and come up to the suite and watch the first period and then do interview afterwards at intermission. Just kind of a casual thing, but kind of a state of the team or how he's feeling. He didn't do a ton of interviews during the year, so it was kind of his way to kind of get a feel for what he's thinking, right? And
nice.
This year, a hot topic for a lot of different things is Kirill Kaprizov, who could be signed next summer to extension. The Wild hope, of course, and Wild fans hope, but obviously there's some uncertainty there because he has to want to commit early. He has to want to sign, and I think the key part of that rhetoric tonight from Leipold is he said, no one's going to offer more money than we will. No one's going to offer probably more term than the Wild can. But his thing is Kaprizov wants to win first and foremost, right? And so I think, Kirill has to see from what happens this year and the prospects coming up. And he's 27 now, he'll be 29 by the time extension starts. If you want to give away 7 more years of your rest of your career, you got to know that there's something special you're playing for. Some of his best moments were gold medal and, playing internationally and having that chance. So, I think as any owner would be is hopeful and optimistic of keeping the best player in franchise history. But even he's probably can't, predict or promise that that's going to happen. But I think that kind of sets the tone for the season. And, what are reasonable expectations for this team? What are they? Do you think obviously playoffs is first and foremost, so the division got better, but what would be disappointing for a Wild fan, let's say, this season?
True. That is the $1 million question. Or if you're Boston, the $64 million question. You know what? It definitely comes with circumstances, right? If this is a healthy roster, not making the playoffs is unacceptable, I think, for the fan base. If we have players go down, I think the curve continues to adjust. And I think that July 1st date is really what will dictate whether this was an acceptable season for the fans or not. If it's good enough for Kaprizov, I think the majority of fans are going to get on board and say, what? Cool, we're good. But if we get to, gosh, I don't even know. Where do I set the mark? Do we call it, if we're out celebrating 4th of July and we don't have either a contract in place or clear reporting coming from the likes of you and Russo saying yeah, this is getting done, that's when fans are probably gonna be clutching pretty hard and maybe losing a little bit of the faith.
So if the Wild, let's say, missed the playoffs and finished 4th in division, but Kaprizov signs July 1, that's an overall win.
Absolutely. And I also think with the caveat of what you said there, if it's the 4th team in the division and they miss, and it's because personally, I think the Pacific has some interesting teams that could be a scenario. I think that's way different than being the 6th team in the Central and being clearly out by all metrics. So I don't know. You could ask 10 fans and you're going to get 12 different answers, but I genuinely believe that as long as it's not an embarrassing season with a healthy roster and we get a Kaprizov extension this summer, fans are happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a Wild fan, probably have to think of it in the long-term perspective, right? Because there hasn't been a lot of the short-term, talk about a championship window, right, when they haven't gone past the first round. Very rarely, at least by the second round once in their entire existence. So, but yeah, I think if you're going to believe in the current regime of this team, 97 is such a huge part of it that there's no other like plan B. Like, oh, Kirill doesn't resign, but then they use that 11, whatever, 12, $13 million that they would have spent on him to get who, you know, there's no like you can trade him, right? But like, I don't know what anytime you trade the best player in a deal, you lose the trade usually, right? Like
usually, but we've seen it be interesting. I mean, you're right. I don't think there's a possible way of winning the deal. I do think that if you come to grips and you make a move that summer, you can make a good enough move to appease the fans if it's clearly that Kirill wants out, right?
Yeah.
If that's the message that's being thrown around, I think fans will be like begging for you to trade him away, right? Now, what the return looks like will definitely impact how people react, but I don't know. I know that there are a lot of Wild fans that can be a little knee jerk and, go week to week with their opinions on the team. Maybe we just need to have a Kirill Kaprizov like flight risk meter every game. Just like, all right, Wild just won 7-2 tonight against the Blackhawks. Flight risk meter, pretty low. Next game, they get drubbed 4-0. All right, we're back up to like 50-50. Like, I don't know. That's kind of how I feel like fans go about it. I mean, especially now, after this game against the Blackhawks, maybe we have to be a little bit less worried about his top destination that he might seek out.
Oh boy, I knew the joke was coming sometime soon. And I guess, like I'm sure as our listeners probably noticed, my colleague in Chicago at the Athletic, Mark Lazerus, brought up on the Athletic Hockey Show, another podcast, a week or two ago that, from what he had heard from someone or some people at the draft, was about Chicago as a destination for Kaprizov in a couple of years. Now, and I love Mark Lazerus, he's a really good reporter. I think that what should be taken from that is not necessarily that Kirill has told anyone he wants to go to Chicago, will be there in 2 years or whatever. I think it's more so the line of the fact that Chicago is going to prepare themselves to make a run, like a lot of teams probably will, for Kirill Kaprizov at that time. I don't think there's a certainty or an element of like this is what's on Kirill's mind right now. I don't think that's on his mind right now. I don't know that for sure, but I don't get the gist that he's thinking, oh, Chicago, Windy City, let's go do this in 2 years. I think the focus right now is on the season and the Wild, and he likes it here, and he wants to see if they can put together a season that's worth remembering and worth building on. But I know my name got attached to a aggregated thing on Bleacher Report, and I was like, I was like at my new house, and I was like sanding and painting cabinets, and like Russo texted me with the screen grab of a Bleacher Report tweet saying Joe Smith said that Kirill Kaprizov likely destination Chicago. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I've been in knee deep in home repair renovation projects. I wasn't even at the draft this year to hear this, like it just, so it's funny how that quickly got deleted and not corrected, but just all of a sudden it was Mark. So, but yeah, I think as it gets closer, and if there is a point in time where he doesn't sign, let's say at that point, then you'll have lots of different teams who will be lining up for him. But tonight looked really good. Power play was clicking on all cylinders. Him and Zuccarello were like old times. It was a big party at XL Energy Center, and they just hope that there's more of those nights this season.
Man, yeah, that power play goal definitely made the fan base feel things. Quick rundown, guys. Good news. Sounds like we got positivity around Kirill Kaprizov. That should be the biggest thing anyone cares about. We're going to get into a little bit of just where the Wild roster's at now as we continue to trim going towards regular season opener, which is just a week away. I still have to remind myself, Joe, that this Friday there's actually like sanctioned NHL regular season games happening. That I don't like how they do that, but it's okay. I'm not going to complain about getting hockey to watch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I think I like that the idea that they're throwing around of having less preseason games, the new CBA, having like around 4 or so. Like our Pierre LeBrun was reporting that tonight that they were talking about different options of making the preseason less games, which I think a lot of people and even teams would like, to make it like 4 games or whatever versus that, down versus like 8 or so.
Is that a knee-jerk reaction to the injuries that have happened the last week?
I don't know. I don't know if it's knee-jerk. I mean, I don't think a lot of players love the preseason as it is, but it is important to get looks at players and get guys reps. Guys come like Jared Spurgeon played his first game since the injuries and the surgery, and it's important to get guys game reps, but it's not like baseball where a pitcher needs to build up for a month and a half to get there. So teams like the preseason games because you still make money off of them, right? You still get the gate receipts and beer is still the same price and all that stuff like that. But and these as reporters, we love a shorter preseason too. Just want to get to the games, right? The season's long enough, but yeah, I think for the Wild preseason, there hasn't been a lot of surprises. I mean, obviously the one injury with Matt Boldy, who practiced, he's going to be expected to be back. They're hoping to be back for the season opener. That was a plan all along. I think it's one of those injuries where if it were during the March stretch run, he would have played, the last few games. But they want to be cautious with him because I think he's going to have a huge season. I think he's just primed for having a big time year. So that was only like, so far at least, injury concern. And the roster is looking like the roster.
Oh, Joe, that they announced today one of the funniest things I've seen, which I haven't seen before. Jake Middleton is day to day with bruises.
I think it was undisclosed.
I saw bruises on Twitter. I don't know if it's real or not, but
I don't think I saw bruises. Like the funny thing is, the best line ever is in hockey, or one of the best lines ever, is when they say guys missing practice due to body maintenance. Body maintenance. I love that. Don't we all need body maintenance days? We all do. Like, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near an athlete, but like everybody needs body maintenance days. So I appreciate the wording on that because it doesn't give any relation to what kind of injury that they have. It just says body maintenance. You're like, all right, sounds good. Whatever. But that's maybe what the bruises you're talking about, but body maintenance.
That's pretty great.
But as far as like you mentioned the camp, like I think I wrote stories on like Riley Heidt, like what are the chances of him making the team, right? And we knew it wouldn't be like easy for him to do it. He'd had to blow them away and like force his way on the team, which he clearly did not. He looked like a guy who needed more time, more seasoning. Like the talent's there, like the hockey sense is there. But like, it's one thing to play in junior and dominate, another thing to go play against men and play pro hockey for the first time and go up against these guys. So I think that's a really good learning experience for Riley, who got sent back to his junior team. I think it was a couple days ago at the last cut. So that was one. Got the Joe Smith hype machine in the preseason. It didn't end up happening. Liam Ogren got to play tonight too, to kind of make one of his final cases to make the team. And reading the tea leaves from the lines and everything, looked like he might be on the outside looking in. I mean, unless there's an injury or Lauko got banged up or whatever, but from the way, unless there's a 13 forward situation, but it's better for him to play top line in Iowa than it is to be hanging around up in the NHL. So, you look at guys like Lauko had a terrific preseason, or he just looks like he's all over the ice and he's physical, he's fast. He set up a goal tonight, just going to the net. And then I think Gaudreau finished it off or something like that. I just think him coming there, him with Gaudreau and Kuzadinov on the fourth line, and you're seeing the Trennan, Rossi, Foligno line being kind of solidified. The Hartman, Kaprizov and Zuccarello reunited, and it feels so good. And then the Johansson, Boldy, right? That's kind of what your lineup will probably look like on opening night. So I think those are we thought the roster might look like that, but it's unless a kid showed up and impressed. So it might just continue to be that way. And the blue line is the guys that they've pretty much signed, with the exception of a guy like Daemon Hunt, who made a really strong case. I think if there were contracts were different, I could see him being as a depth defenseman at the NHL level. But again, he's better playing number one defenseman in Iowa than playing a 7th D John Merrill role in Minnesota, in my opinion. You could argue about practice time and him practicing against these guys and if that's better. But it's hard as him in the press box next to me versus playing pro hockey, even though he's probably one of those guys that's above AHL level, but right in the fringe there of NHL level. And hey, I give him credit. He looked good last year. He learned a lot in his kind of his cameos in the NHL, and he had a heck of a summer. And he looked like he learned a lot. He figured it out, and he looks and believes like he belongs. And that's the first step in getting there. And so I think if there's an injury or two, like he's a guy who could really clearly step in and play on that third pair.
Yeah, I think the biggest things that I've seen in this preseason are, one, I like that third line way more than I thought I would. They looked awesome tonight, and Daemon Hunt is an NHLer. He is. Now, you said it. There's not a spot. There just flat out isn't. I don't want him coming up to be the 7th or 8th defenseman, but if there's an injury, do you expect him to leapfrog John Merrill to get playing time, or do you think that that's still going to be the Merrill spot just because of dollars?
Well, I mean, if there's an injury and it's not John Merrill, like in theory, you could have Hunt play and then Merrill still be in that 7th D role, right? They're paying him anyways. And I think that if Hunt goes down to Iowa, let's say, and has another strong start to the season and continues to build up from that, then I don't see in a situation why he can't step in and play. So yeah, I think you want to be able to reward guys for doing the right things and getting themselves in position. And especially if he gets sent down and disappointed, not going down there and moping, but go out there and just being a leader, which he was a leader on that last year's team, even for being a young defenseman. And he probably shouldn't have been their number one defenseman the last 2 years or up at that top pairing, but they didn't have a lot of veteran D. They had a lot of young players on defense, and he was their most polished one. So, so give him credit. And the Wild fans have always asked about their defense prospects and depth, right? And when are these guys going to show up? And at least there's one, and then you'll have Zeev Byam coming as soon as Denver season's over. So you have a couple of those guys that are on their way to make room if there's a need there. I mean, a lot of the guys already signed long term, so not many spots at the end there. I mean, when Bogosian's gone or whatever, or Merrill's gone, but Spurgeon, Brodin, Middleton, Faber, Byam will be there long. Like there's not a lot of spots there at the end.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that develops the next couple of years. Who stays, who doesn't. Jakub Lauko, we got to talk about him a little bit more, because this is a guy that people are starting to catch on to, right? Like when the trade happened, no one thought much of it. Like it was a slow off season. Guy that no one really knew except for the few that remembered that he beat the wheels off of both Deweys last year. My brother-in-law, who you had some beers with in Tampa, he texted me tonight. He's like, "What's the deal with this Lauko guy?"
Yeah.
I'm just like, only way I can put it is he's an absolute lunatic in the best way possible, and you're going to love him. And like literally 20 minutes later, he's like, "No, yeah, I already love him. He's awesome. I don't even need to know anything more. It's great." I got to tell on myself here, though. On our Monday stream for Judd's Buds, I told Z, I'm like, hand up. I absolutely assumed that him being the grape man meant that he was like a total wino.
Yeah,
like, I thought he was a big wine guy, but apparently
not
it's
actual grapes.
Yeah. It's just normal grapes. I've never heard of a grape addiction, but it's awesome.
A grape dealer, like the team of people ask for grapes, and he's the guy who hooks it up. Like that's a marketing thing. That's a endorsement deal waiting to happen. Who gets endorsed by like the large grape companies, right? Or who, like that's a shtick that nobody has, right? And plus, I just love, like, aside from the fact that we're Lord of the Rings kind of themed podcast, and he's got all the LOR tats obviously on his arm. He has Game of Thrones stuff on there too. But he grew up, watching Lord of the Rings and got the action figures and all that fun stuff. So looking forward to having him on the podcast later in October. I think that's our plan. So, but yeah, I love teams that have personality, and you always want to build teams, characters with character, right? I think he fits that bill. And so that they've lost kind of some of that looseness that the Dumbas or them of the world had, or Maroons. Like, it's cool to have I think for them to have a guy that has a little bit of a juice, not grape juice, but juice to his personality. I think really going to help the group.
Yeah. Well, and on that point too, it's funny because in the most Minnesota Wild fan fashion ever, say what you want about Wild fans, they are the quickest to spot out fun gimmicks. And of course, the player most talked about tonight was Marc-Andre Fleury, who was not playing in this game because he did his best Nick Bonino impression and dressed up, full get up, pretending to be one of the members of the ice crew tonight. And I don't know, it's just good vibes. There's nothing bad you can say about it.
No, not at all. It's a new one too. Like, it's kind of hard being Fleury because you've kind of done pretty much everything right when it comes to like pranks and being creative and, hanging a teammate's clothes from the rafters before practice and stuff, or, whatever. And so I appreciate the fact early in preseason, he's already getting it started, right? Like, I feel like this might be taking to another level in his final season, right? He doesn't want to go out not doing stuff. He's got all these different tricks up his sleeve. So I love the fact that he just kind of subtly did that and surprised teammates too, dressing up and no one knowing any different. But
yeah, nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. Have you seen the video of Bonino out in Nashville?
I did not see that one. No.
So when he was playing for the Predators, he and his wife, it might have even been a Halloween party, but it was a team party. And like all the players were kind of showing up one at a time. And he and his wife dressed up, like both had like full, like big ass beards and stuff. And they were going up to every player asking for autographs.
Are you
serious? They were like pounding them for autographs. And they had someone from like the rooftop videotaping the whole thing. And they're like, some of the players are like, no, get out of my face. Some were like playing in with it and like, oh yeah, cool. And then they just like walk into the party at the end in their get-ups. And everyone's like, how did they get in here? And then they rip the stuff off and everyone's like, dear Lord. It's
God,
awesome. How do people think of this stuff? I don't know.
No, that's part of what makes, I think, hockey great. I think we're going to see in this Amazon series too, the personalities of players that I think are really, I think hockey players are kind of trained and taught that be about the team, not about them, and like not to step in front of anybody else's for getting attention for themselves. And I'm so glad that these kind of shows and behind the scenes are showing people what people who are around the game or writers or people see all the time, which are these personalities and passions and different things that make these guys more than just a guy in your fantasy team, right? And so I'm hoping that this is just one example of all these guys, McDavid's to guys on the Leafs. I think Nylander's on that. He's one of the best personalities in the league.
He's awesome.
I think that more and more of this, the favorite stories that I write are behind the scenes personality stuff. And that's what fans, I think, really enjoy to kind of consume. So only way hockey's going to grow itself, and get themselves somewhere near or getting a little further ahead, and because they still trail the NFL and NBA, like you need to be able to market your best players.
Yeah, no, and that's what they've done so well. And I know it goes against the typical hockey mojo and vibe, but we're starting to see it more and more, and I love the progression of that. We'll probably have a little bit more of a comprehensive, season preview. If you guys have specific players, position groups, whatever that you want specific questions answered about, let us know in the comments for next week, as that's when the season opener hits. But today we're going to transition now from the Minnesota Wild to a little bit more Minnesota Golden Gopher talk as we bring on head coach of your Gophers, Bob Motzko. And do note, this was banked ahead of time. We asked him about Rhett Pitlick before Rhett Pitlick had decided to move on to play for Mankato. I'm sorry, that will really irk the fans down there. The Minnesota State Mavericks. They're not the Mankato Mavericks. They're not Mankato State. It's Minnesota State. Parenthetical Mankato. But enjoy, guys. Bob was great. Let's send it over. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us by way of Austin, Minnesota, playing his college hockey at St. Cloud State University and splitting the past 23 seasons of coaching between the Huskies and your Minnesota Golden Gophers, Bob Motzko. Appreciate you jumping on, Bob.
All right. Thanks for having me.
We start with a couple looser questions with everyone, and some of your players have had some interesting responses to this first one, but it's a bit of a Rorschach test. When you look at the Minnesota Wild logo, what do you make of it? What is it?
So we're going right to pro hockey on the first one. Well, you know, I love the Wild. I love the fact, you know, they came back to Minnesota. I'm a purist with the old North Stars. So it was hard for some of us that, you know, that were really into it to make the switch. And that's why I love when they've got when the Wild go to that throwback uniform, the green and gold. I think it's awesome. But you know, it's supposed to be the Wild in there somewhere. I try to find it. It's a little different, but I just love the fact they're back in our state.
That's fair. And I mean, you being a purist, do you get bothered at all seeing the Wild logo in those colors instead of the North Star logo?
Yeah, we're over it now. You know, we're over it. That's why when they came back to that uniform, you know, when they popped it out a few years ago, it was wow. It had that wow moment for a lot of us and they still bring it out. I know they have the last couple of years at times, and I love it.
Well, as you probably heard or saw, like our podcast is called Fellowship of the Rink, a stick tap to Lord of the Rings. We're both big fans of the movie. I wasn't sure if you ever seen the movies, or if you haven't seen the movies, do you have kind of like a nerd itch, like a book series you read, a TV show you love? Do you collect things? Or is there anything that's kind of like something that kind of off the beaten path that some of your passions besides obviously hockey and everything?
Well, I have not watched that. So sorry, guys, that I'm not on top of that one. I keep things kind of simple. I mean, like I get into, like, I love Yellowstone, but I was probably 3 seasons late when I got into it, and I've been madder than a hornet that we got to wait, you know, that they've kept us hanging to finish the 5th season, and it's coming in November. And I did go out to Montana this year. So that was on my bucket list. So I crossed that off and got to do some fly fishing. So, you know, and I do get addicted to, you know, the 30 for 30, you know, sports documentaries. Actually, I watched the one last night on Parcell and Belichick. I actually watched it again last night, and that's it. And I still watch reruns of Friends all the time. I've seen every episode, you know, 500 times. But I like 30-minute sitcoms. It shuts my brain down. I can just laugh.
Absolutely. You need to get back and relax, you know, because the season's so long. And especially for the Gophers, you usually see you guys in the Frozen Four playing for a national championship, you know, made a run in the playoffs last year too. Always expectations are very high for you guys. Like, what's your kind of feel? Every team has a different personality, a different feel to it. What's your read on this group, where you have some guys that are
coming back with Snuggeruds, but you lost a lot of like fifth-year guys that have been kind of heart and soul players for your team. Like, how do you see the personality changing with all the different?
I got to answer this in a couple of ways. We did lose some heart and soul guys that had been with us, and we're so critical to what we had gone through in our last few years, and just great teammates and great Gophers. And yet college sports, you turn the page, and we got a completely different feel about our group. Now, you're also doing this show when we've been, we're only 4 hours a week, and so we've been on the ice now 6 hours. So we're, part of it's on the eyeball test, and part of it is, we know it was returning, and we see the new guys that we've added in. So I want to soften my comments, because I'd like to see us play a couple games before I really tell you. But we got good size, we got depth in our lineup. And you could even see it this summer. The guys that were around this summer, and most everybody spent a little time here. We kind of got a swagger back in our training. We got a swagger back in our work, in our work ethic, and our grind. And just in the very short snapshot of being on the ice, the depth is at an extremely high level. Size and speed. There are a lot of good things that we like about this hockey team, with the returning players, and then the mixture of our new guys and a couple of guys out of the transfer portal. So we're very optimistic. But once again, I'd like to see us play a couple times to really give you a feel of this. So that's the coach in me.
That's reasonable. But what can you tell us about some of the incoming freshmen, at least from the first 6 hours of skating?
Well, you got Eric Paulson comes in. Here's what's different with us this year. Eric Paulson comes in, who's an older freshman, had a terrific year in Dubuque last year. Beckett Hendrickson, after coming out of the U.S. program, also ended up spent some time in Sioux Falls, and he got traded to Dubuque, and they were line mates a lot of toward the back half. And really, that year in the USHL, I can't tell you how it helped Beckett, prepare for this. Zemer, Brody he's just a warrior, and he's got that DNA makeup in his game. The coaches that he had in the U.S. development program, and what we watched, he's just and how they've handed him off and delivered him. It's all there. Like he's much more physical and far advanced in his compete level than a true freshman normally would be. So. And then we got two defensemen that are coming in. Gruba, another one. Gruba played 2 years in Fargo, and Whipple was in the U.S. development program, so he's well schooled. And then August Falloon was a 3-year player for Tri-City. There's depth in size and I'm always in talent in that group, but more important, experience. Great experience with those guys that we brought in. Then Matthew Woods, a transfer in, as it comes in, is still a young player, but as a junior, he's got 2 years of college experience. And then Liam Soulier from Penn State is a 5th-year player. We've kind of added. We don't look young. Like none of those guys look young. They look like they're fitting in right from day one at a high level, and that. We're really excited about that group.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about the importance of the USHL season for a guy like Beckett Hendrickson. We had the unexpected departure of Logan Cooley last summer. And, I don't know how tough of a decision it was, but how did you come to the conclusion that Jimmy Clark was going to be the guy to step in and fill those shoes? And how do you think he did?
Well, he did great. And now we're talking on some sophomores and yeah. Logan made the decision late in the summer, and all these athletes are under such tremendous, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but and he made the decision that he really felt was best in his career. And of course, we support it. It was great that we had him for the 1 year. Wish we would have had him for 2, but it didn't work out. But we had to add a player late in the summer, and we'd gone out and followed Jimmy through his year in Green Bay, and he had a terrific year in Green Bay. And the benefit from him last year, he had some freshmen in him last year as a true freshman coming in, but he looks completely different this year. He looks like a completely new player, but the experiences he gone through last year, with Green Bay, with being with our program last year and playing, he looks like a brand new player. He just, the confidence that in great summer in the weight room, and with a handful of our guys, we're going to see the benefit from him from what happened with him last year. He's going to have a much, much different role with us this year, impactful in our lineup.
Yeah, and another guy that's going to have a big impact. You already mentioned transfer portal. I don't know if you were a fan of the transfer portal before, but you got to be now landing a guy like Matthew Wood. Where do you see him slotting into the group? Like, how do you see him fitting in coming fresh?
Well, I'll get on Matthew, but right now that's probably how we put the puzzle together with our depth. It's going to take us some time to do that. And a lot of times, trial and error, try lines, see what fits together, play a handful of games, juggle some things up. And we're going to figure that out. And that's what we have to do. We have to put this puzzle piece together. And however we choose to start it, I have a feeling a month from now it's going to look different, but they're going to dictate how that goes together. But, was able to see, Matthew on film. Obviously, we got reports on him, but now we've been on the ice with him, and every day he's taking a step forward and getting more confident and comfortable. That's probably a better word to use, because you come into the environment. But he's a big, strong athlete, and he takes everything to the hole. You can see that he's got offense in his game. And if he continues to, just in the 2 weeks we've been going at it, if he continues to grow like we've been watching, he's got the chance to be just a tremendous player for us.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see him this year for sure. And there's been a bit of online speculation here, Bob, and I don't know if there's been anything official yet, but what is Rhett Pitlick's status with the team?
Rhett's been working through, his people, and pro hockey's been a big part of what, he's wanted to do and where he wants to go. And we've given him all the space that he needs to make those decisions. And he's working through that.
Sure. Fair. And you brought in a Canadian, which I know for a long time wasn't the move for the Gophers. Was that just like purely to replace the quota being filled by Justin Close? And just talk about trying to replace a guy like Justin Close. It's a tall order.
I know. Well, Lou Nanny was from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, is one of the greatest Gophers of all time. So there
we go.
Murray Williamson, another All-American that played here years and years ago, and Jack LaFontaine. So there is a history of Canadians being here that goes back before I was even born. So, our state does a great job of developing talent, but we kind of got to run right now some Canadian goaltenders, and Nathan Airy, also from Western Canada that's back this year, and we're going to see a lot more of him. But that's what, and we got a ton of faith in Nathan Airy. But he was injured till Christmas last year. We think he's got a just big time upside as a goaltender. And then that's why we went into the portal, like to give us a little experience back there. And Liam's he's just a terrific young man. And he's got experience. He's played over 100 college games. He's won in every building in our conference. He's got 50 wins in college hockey. He's got over 100 junior games behind, and completely was full disclosure when we were talking with Liam about the situation here, and he kind of recruited us. Was kind of cool in knowing the situation that we had, and he's fitting in great with the guys, and he's a good goaltender. He looks poised in there like an old wily veteran. And this is going to be something new for all of us. And with this, I still think the transfer portal is new. It's something that it kind of got thrown upon all of college athletics. Of course, you see it far greater in football and basketball than you do in hockey. And it's leaking into hockey now, and it's just part of the world. It's not a negative. It's just you've got to manage it, and I think that it's going to take a handful of years. I'm kind of going off script a bit. I think it's going to take a handful of years for all of us to. When I say all of us, programs, whether you're football, hockey, or tennis, and also for athletes and families to figure out if it's the right thing to do. And there's going to be, we're all collecting data on it, and the arrow is going to point in a direction. And a handful of years from now, I think we're all going to be, it's going to be, sometimes right now it's clear as mud, but in a handful of years, I think there is a way to use it to the benefit both the student athlete and their experience, and then also with our individual teams that we're coaching. And I think this, like Liam Soulier, is a great example that this might be a tremendous fit for us.
Yeah.
You're kind of probably a traditionalist too, going back in the day, coaching, guys staying 3-4 years, especially some of the teams you coached for the championship teams with the Gophers. We had Leipold, and we've had Paul Martin on the podcast as well. What are some of your more vivid memories of those teams? Obviously, a team that's kind of the standard for a lot of the guys that you bring in recruit. Look back on favorite memories of the characters and just the moments that you had there with those teams.
Back when you're asking back when I was an assistant here.
Yeah.
Well, I was pretty fortunate when in 2002 I was a rookie coach here. They hired me, so I jumped on board a pretty good. They were ready to go. What I remembered about that team was like you start coaching, and I mean, we're going back a handful of years now, obviously. Like, this is really a good hockey team. Like, I was a fresh set of eyes, and I go, oh my goodness sakes, like that defensive core with Paul and Leo and Ballard and DeMarkey and John Stevens and Nick Ainge. I think there was just a stud defensive core with high-end players, and Hauser and net. So you were in every game with a D-core like that. In Minnesota, I think that's been one of our strengths in our state, and one of our strengths at the University of Minnesota, have D-cores that are outstanding. And then Johnny Pohl and Tafe and Riddle up front, and Kowalska, and that first year. And I'm going to miss some names, but it had ingredients. Grant Patolny, it had ingredients, but we had to learn to believe in. That team had to learn to believe in itself. That because we started off great, couple kinks, in the middle of the year, but. I know we had referenced like Boston College, and I'm going to be off on something. They'd kind of gone to 3 or 4 straight Frozen Fours without winning, and then I think they finally popped through, or right after that it popped through, and they had gone 50 years without a national title, and so that was kind of the word. Sometimes teams have to get there to learn, and maybe that's us right now. The teams have to learn through their losses how to be successful in the tournament. And that was one of the messages that our coaching said, let's not get there and have to learn. This team is ready to do it now. And they had characters on that team too. They had some, real tough-nosed, hard characters that I think willed that team never to believe in itself and get it done. And of course, talent was there. And it was just an enjoyable ride. And then it carried through. It took a completely different team the next year. And that's when Vanek came in, to join that group the next year. And that team found itself winning in a completely different way. So it was pretty lucky that I came in at the right time. because those awful lot of talent on those teams with great character and great leadership.
The blue line's been a staple for the program a long time. One of the guys that Wild fans know well now is Brock Faber, and you talked about him a lot the last couple of years. I was there at the Frozen Four with you a couple of years ago and seeing up close. Why do you think he's made that transition to the NHL so seamlessly? I mean, people say the NHL takes 200 games for a defenseman to find their footing, and he came in there off the bat and was pretty steady. Just what, just from from him, makes him a guy who's ready for the NHL, and not just ready, but a really, really good defenseman.
Yeah, almost star defense. It took him 2 games to acclimate. One, and I'm always that defensive core. Every time, people want to talk about Faber a lot here because he's with the Wild, but then how do you not say Jackson Lacombe and Johnson and that entire D-core was outstanding. We had 2 years ago, and we had some awful good young defensemen who are now juniors for us that are going to help carry the mail. But Brock, world-class defender, and he has been a world-class athlete. So defending for him is like breathing air for us. It just comes natural to him. He knows he's good at it, and he's confident in it. So there's immediately he can step in and do that. And he did it in the U.S. development program. He did it for us, and of course he's doing it with the Wild. But the biggest thing about Brock is his heart and his character, and he put every ounce of his heart and soul into being a Gopher and this program and his team and the team that he led. And we knew it from the staff, but more important, his teammates knew it. And I think the Wild are seeing that he just has that character, that he has that it factor as an athlete, and it's awful special. And we were fortunate to have it, and the Wild have it now, and they know exactly what, it's kind of surprised when, like I said, we always get our athletes and they don't come with, instruction manuals. But when they have that it factor and they show up on your doorstep, it's different. And he's got that.
Now we just need him to kick over some money for those NIL dollars that you guys need, right?
Go ahead.
Sorry, we got 2 questions left here, Bob, and we'll let you get out of here. First one, asking for a friend. What are the do's and don'ts for media members at a Bob Motzko post-game presser?
I don't have any do's and don'ts. No, I wouldn't have any do's and don'ts. And sometimes maybe I get a little ornery, but that's
just Jess.
Think of it. Sports is emotional. The game is over, and I spent when the game is over, on average, I spend 30 seconds in the locker room because I really think whether if you're upset about something, it doesn't do any good to talk about it right after the game, because they are too. Your athletes are as well. And if you're really excited, you can throw around some high fives and then you get out of the room. But your best messages are used more for Monday. And though we coaches have to then walk in front of, and it comes with the territory, you have to. And so there, and I've been around a while now. I've been doing this for a while. So no do's and don'ts on for most of it. I hope that I'm going to tell you exactly how I saw it and just try to be honest. And I try to add a little humor and fun to it when I can, to make it personable for the listeners. And that's who's listening to your questions, and so you hope that you can actually shed some light that is favorable to your student athletes, to your program, your team. And I rarely am critical because these are young kids and young men, and Monday we'll work it out if we've got some issues after the weekend.
Fair enough. All right, last one here then, Bob. Final question, brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. We've had a wide range of answers here, but your dream golf outing, who is the foursome that you are assembling? And this could be, athlete, celebrity, dead, alive, fictional. We've had a full range. So anything you want to throw.
Well, Michael Jordan. Like I want to have some fun, like Monday Night Football. Now I got to watch the
Manning cast.
I got I'm addicted to, so I'm sorry, Eli, but I want Peyton Manning in it because I think I love his sense of humor and how he does it. So we're at 2. I spent some time this summer for the first time where I got to spend an hour with Neil Broughton, and one of the great Gophers, and came through my era, and I think one of the greatest hockey players ever to come out of Minnesota. So I'll put Neil in that group because I'm sure he would enjoy being with those two guys.
And don't want to stop you, Bob, but I imagine you want to be one of the 4 too, right?
I'm going to caddy.
Oh, okay. Well, then give us a 4th.
If anybody has ever seen me golf, it's not pretty. But I'll be all right. I'll be the 4th in that group.
I mean, we saw you cruising around out there for the alumni event.
Yeah, and it wasn't pretty, trust me. But there.
Well, thanks so much for joining us as the start of the camp gets going. I'm sure we'll have you on again sometime during the season when you have more than 6 hours to get a better feel for the group you have. But thanks, Bob, for being on, and looking forward to seeing you at the rink.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Bob, for jumping on with us. We'll see between him and Martin. Maybe we'll have to get the occasional hits throughout the season just to make sure we're keeping tabs on how things are developing. But not a man that's short for words.
No, he's not. And, I like to get a little more of his personality in the beginning, too, about kind of what his little off-ice passions are. And he was really good on the guys like Snuggerud and how Matthew Wood's going to really find his way on this team. And I could get a sense just from talking to him, like how, I don't know if he's even low-key excited. He's really excited about this team. Every year you think with the Gophers, they could have a chance to go, but you could tell even with the guys that they've lost, like he has this kind of, said it's a different feel to this group than before. And so maybe it is because they don't have, the first round draft picks, right? Maybe it's a different kind of group mixture between some of the youth and a guy who came back like Snuggerud with a chip on his shoulder to finish it off. So for a guy that's lost a lot of really good players the last couple of years, he did seem really, really optimistic about what this team can do, and which should bode well if you're a Gopher fan, right? Like I think every year they measure themselves against the team that last won 2 decades ago when Motzko was assistant coach. And, I think, it's bound to happen sometime soon, just the way that they've been building this program. Like you give yourself a shot every year. You'll odds are with the teams you have, you get that ring again. But it was fun to talk to him, and looking forward to seeing more Gophers on the podcast this season. If you have any Gophers players you want us to talk to, hit up in the comments or on Twitter as well, since they've been really good with connecting with us for this.
Yeah, Scott's awesome. Best in the business. All right, well, last segment here. As always, we have Keyboard Warriors, our hot take segment brought to you by our great friends at Barrel Theory Beer Company. Drinking right now their Voice in the Night Hazy Double Dry Hop Triple IPA. I didn't even realize it was a triple, but it absolutely makes sense now with what I was drinking. Delicious as always. And you guys will have a little bit more info next week with the opener on what exact beers they're going to be releasing at the X this year, where you can find them. But stay tuned because, again, whether it's for your in-game benefit or if you want to hit them up for the pregame like I will be, Barrel Theory is simply the best craft beer you're going to find in St. Paul. It's not close. Topics here for this week then. Got 2 wild topics and 1 non-wild topic. Joe, I'll start with the non-wild one. Phil Kessel is the player that Columbus Blue Jackets need.
Oh, man. I mean, I was kind of surprised that he hasn't landed anywhere the last couple of years, right? Are you? I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy. I don't know if he's the guy that they need necessarily. Like,
well, I'll explain, but you're fair. But for last year, though, he didn't want to do an AHL stint, which is what Vancouver asked of him. Mm-hmm. This year, from what I'm hearing, is that like he's willing to take PTOs and like try and figure it out, and like he's not even getting that. It's not great. So for me, it's a couple tiers here. First, and I guess this one has just recently been nullified, so we'll strike this one from the records. But I was gonna say they haven't even hit the cap floor yet. Obviously, with the unfortunate tragedy with Johnny Gaudreau, they actually have said that they're not mandating that the Columbus Blue Jackets make up for that salary to hit the cap floor. But I think that he is the exact kind of player that can come in, lighten the mood, be a good locker room guy. He's not going to be a bad guy to have playing with your skill players. Again, like this isn't a year where Columbus is coming in and thinking that they're going to contend, obviously. Now, with Dean Evason there, they're going to be pushing for playoffs because that's the only way he's wired. But Phil Kessel just adds an element of something that they don't currently have. And after signing James Van Riemsdyk, I just need the reunion of those two. They are like two peas. Watching them play for Team USA back in the day was awesome. Them in Toronto, some of the stories you hear, Greg Wyshynski does an incredible impression of Phil, basically saying, James, you just don't forget who got you here in this league. Like,
oh my God.
Like, and him just like, shut up, Randy. Talking to Randy Carlisle, like all of the one-liners, like Phil Kessel, it's not a shock to anyone. Like he's my favorite player, period. Obviously a little bit long in the tooth and, understandable why some teams wouldn't be interested, but a team like Columbus, just finding a good guy for the room, can contribute on the power play. You don't have to give him crazy minutes. It could be a fun move.
As long as he's willing to accept these kind of roles and assignments, right? Like maybe isn't the streak still going for him?
He actually said he didn't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
Like he came out and said that last year when he was trying to find jobs. And I mean, look what he did in Vegas. Like he was okay playing that limited role, like sometimes playing, sometimes not. When he played, he was lucky to get 10 minutes. I don't know. It's an interesting one. The only caveat there is I don't know if Dean Evason is going to be a Phil Kessel guy. That could be a problem.
That's my question. I don't know if he plays the style that Dean Evason demands. So he's not going to be the guy on the forecheck hunting guys down, right? You know, but every coach, no matter their philosophy, needs guys to score goals, right? Like, there's no coach that hates goal scorers, right? Just make sure the goal scorers don't just play one way or, give up too much at their end. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what Columbus does just because, there's no playbook for this. There's no, thing you can kind of look to and say, this is how we handle something like this. But I do think Dean is the kind of person and the kind of coach that, can get a lot out of guys and kind of be that compassionate voice too. So, and we'll have him on the pod next week, tee up the season opener. But yeah, I think that's got to be, can only imagine what that phone call was like to figure that out and just the tragedy. And then all of a sudden, what do we do now?
And it's a lot tougher too, where like you're coming in fresh. Like it'd be different if like Dean had been the coach there for a year or two. Like it's got to be really weird grounds to come in and like try and champion, bringing this team together, getting through a tragedy when like you don't quite have that presence established quite yet. Like it's almost something that he's going to have to slowly build up to and, earn with the team as the season progresses.
Yeah, literally it's, the guys could rally around it and become something that brings them closer together, or it could be something that just kind of in the back of their minds all year and hard to just you can't get over it. Right. So interesting to see what happens with them, Phil Kessel or not.
Yeah, fair. All right. Next one, Wyshynski, aforementioned. had his bold predictions article for ESPN Plus. And his for the Minnesota Wild was that Jesper Wallstedt takes Philip Gustafsson's job. Depending on which Wild fan you ask, this is either like fairly, toasty take or like ice cold, because they all are, for whatever reason, have been begging for Gustafsson to be traded. So what's your take on the heat meter for Wallstedt taking Gustafsson's job?
That is not out of the realm of possibility, I think. Like, I don't think it's from day one guaranteed. I think, Gustafsson, had that experience 2 years ago where he was playing like one of the best goalies in the league. And I don't know if he's that guy, but I don't think he was the guy he was last year either. So I think it depends on how he handles this. From the interviews he did early in camp, when people were asking about the 3 goalies and how that works, he was kind of very short on those ones. And it's hard to get a read from the body language, but you probably could sense he probably isn't a big fan of it. I think he probably wants the chance to play and play a lot, and him and Fleury. But the way Jesper came into camp and the way he's looked, the way he's played, and John Hines is going to play the goalie who gives him the best chance to win. So if Wallstedt comes in here is dynamite and he earns those starts, they're going to come from somebody, right? So whether it is Fleury or Wallstedt, or Fleury or Gustafsson. So it is kind of a hot take in the sense that the 2 guys have a little more pedigree than Wallstedt, but they've been very open from the beginning in the summer that this is a chance. And we all know that Gustafsson had his name in trade rumors and was out there and could have been had in theory. And that could happen during the season as well.
Apologies to, my co-host on another show, Z, who is a Boston native, but maybe Boston Bruins are going to need a goalie. Well,
if Swayman asks for a trade, and they don't trade him back for Ullmark to Ottawa, but
you know what? What if they traded him to Ottawa and reunited Swayman and Ullmark? That or the other doomsday scenario is there's some big money that could be buried on LTIR over in Montreal. Weird. That's almost like the perfect amount to bring over one Jeremy Swayman.
Well, and isn't Line out only a few months though? Like, he's not out for the whole year. So
what I saw was at least 2 or 3 months, but it could be longer. So I don't know. Depends. But fair.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I think that'll be really intriguing to me of how they spot Wallstedt in there, how they get these guys all to play well. And hey, like, if you're a team that had below average goaltending by the numbers last year, why not have a competition? Why not have the best guy get it? Because they clearly, this team needs to have the goaltending at a much better place than it was last year. And whoever that might be, if you're a rookie or you're a 39-year-old, 40-year-old veteran, like, bring it. I'm sure Dean Evason would have loved better goaltending the first 2 months of last season.
Oh, man. Would he ever? I can't imagine how many words he has on that. Last one I have here. I feel like this is a pretty hot take, but you rate me on the heat meter. I don't care where they slot in the lineup. I think that Ryan Hartman and Marco Rossi combined for 60 goals.
60?
60 between the two of them.
Like, it's not like Hartman had 32 a couple years ago. Rossi had 20. Rossi had 21. So it's not like if they both have career seasons, think that's possible. I think Rossi told me he could be a 30-goal guy, and that's what his goal is. So you get 60 from those 2 guys, all of a sudden your secondary scoring isn't quite much of a problem, which also means Hartman plays most of the year probably with those 2 guys up top, right?
I think they can both thrive on the first and third lines. Like, I think both of them look great, either with Kaprizov and Zuccarello or with Foligno and Trennan. I think it's really intriguing. And everyone talks about the potential for a sophomore slump. I think Marco Rossi's getting the sophomore bump. I think he is a guy. He was moved around the lineup a ton last year. First year, like playing true minutes, everything he's been through on his road to get here. I'm really excited to see what he does with like an established role coming in. Hey, he can elevate, sure, and like he might get moved around, like that's going to happen throughout the year. But last year he was all over the place, and I think he's kind of found his niche with the team, at least for the time being. I think him being, a 50 to 60 point guy is exactly what the team needs for depth scoring. I think the X factor for the team, because I love the first, third, and fourth line. If we can get some level of consistency from the second line, this is a playoff team. But that's a big if based on historical figures that we've seen. But I don't know. Hartman, Rossi, flip them back and forth. I don't care which line they're on between the two. I think both of them could be in that 30 range. Maybe one of them puts up 35, the other one 25. But I think some fans would say that's insane because, one, they love to shit on Hartman and Rossi, which I don't understand. But also saying, okay, whichever one's on the first line, sure. The one that's on the third line, no way. And I think
they'll both get first line reps. They'll both get first line reps at some point. I think Rossi will get some reps there too. But yeah, I think Rossi's been really good with Foligno, too. I think he fits well with him. Even last year, look at the numbers analytic wise. I think Rossi can score 30. I do think he can. It's a matter of opportunity. It's a matter of getting some looks on the power play, all that stuff like that. He had a few goals he felt he left on the table last year, even though he played all 82 games, had a really good year. So it is a hot take, but it's not like saying like Jakub Trennan's going to score 30 goals or Lauko's going to score 30 goals or whatever. I think it's,
I think Lauko, yes, I agree with you. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Trennan could, again, it's still a pretty hot take to say that Trennan is going to hit 30, but crazier things have happened. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah,
in Scott's mind, everybody's going to score 30 goals for the Wild this season. Boldy's going to score 30
goals. Everyone gets a 4x4 with a no move clause. It's just blanket across the board.
If they're getting 30, then Kirill's getting 50, right? And then Boldy's getting 40. It'd be the highest scoring team of all time. They're just, So, anyways, this is very clearly a Scott hot take in preseason. Everything's going well. This team's gonna take a playoff run. So, I think you're drinking some of the Craig Leipold Kool-Aid a little bit. So
I'm trying to force myself to be positive, jokes. It's in my nature to be a pessimist. Every year going into the season, I'm usually the one that's like, people are a little too high on the Wild. But I don't know. This is a weird year where and we'll get into it more next week, division preview, season preview. There's a cluster of 4 teams that are all pretty level in my mind. There's 3 clear leaders. There's, in my mind, 2 clear teams trailing, but others will argue with me that there's only 1. And then you've got the 3 or 4 in between. And it's going to be interesting to see how that shuffles out. Injuries are going to play a big part in it, but with perfect health, I really don't. It's going to be hard for people to really firmly rank the likes of Utah, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and St. Louis.
Yeah. This is a team that had 100-point seasons back-to-back years with a lot of the same guys. So, in theory, if they're healthy, their goaltending is above average.
Decent.
I think the Wild fans and the Wild should be really disappointed if they miss the playoffs based upon who they have, if they're healthy and all that stuff goes right. They'd be too good of a team to miss. But, again, weird things, as Craig Leipold said in this business, shit happens. So it's and a lot of that happened last year for them.
That it did. All right. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Joe, anything that you either are working on in the shadows or things that Russo's told you are coming up here soon for The Athletic?
Yeah, I'll have my Ryan Hartman feature coming out sometime this week, I believe. I know he had a sit down with Brock Faber. We'll have that story coming out. at some point in coming days here. And we'll have a Dean Evison story too, I think, heading into opening week opener. Bunch of stuff, and some big picture stories as well, of where the team is at. So a lot of things coming in the first few weeks or leading into the season, and then from there on, a lot of things are dictated by what happens on the ice, right? That'll take a lot of different stories in different directions. But obviously, check out all the preseason stories that Russo wrote. I wrote a few of them, but I had a great story on Mr. Lauko too, his personality, and talked to his teammates in Boston about that. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening, guys. And thank God hockey is back.
Thank God hockey is back officially this Friday with Buffalo, New Jersey, which is an interesting matchup. But I'm sure everyone will be locked in. And then that coincides right with the Amazon series coming out. So all the hockey that we can handle. If you're new to Fellowship of the Rink and enjoyed the episode, please, hit the subscribe button, leave 5-star review, anything you can do, spread the word, tell your friends. And if video is more your thing, go over and subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Soda Pod, where we'll have, full podcast recordings, clips, interviews, and even highlight reels. But as always, we really appreciate you guys for tuning in for this week's installment of Fellowship of the Rink. You stay classy, stay to hockey.